welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate, episode 54. Tonight, we're joined by Cory Heald from the Brew Squadron to talk about list building, a little bit about list building, and the UK X-Wing Open. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is breaking down their top 8, kind of what the meta has shifted or changed to. There is at least one surprise in there. A Rebel list did not win. There you go. Surprise. It's out. You can see it. But what we're going to do is we're going to transition that discussion, and we're going to actually kind of talk a little bit about list building, some of the new points, values, and what we want to talk about is intrinsic value of a ship, right? And so the intrinsic value of a ship has essentially changed since we have, I guess I'm zoomed in on the stream. Essentially, the intrinsic value has kind of changed since list building has started. And what we want to do is have a conversation around what does that mean? Where do we go from there? And how does it kind of affect list building? And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. With that being said, let me bring in my co-host and my guest for tonight.
What's going on? Hi.
Please welcome JJ and Cory. How are you guys doing tonight, sirs?
Doing well. I had a very, very tight Kyber Cup match last night against my opponent. It went down to the final round, and it came down to one of my ships not dropping its cargo after getting shot, which is a Y-Wing. And it was very, very close, but it was such a fun game, though.
Yeah, awesome. I had a great game today, too, on Hexile that I was streaming, and we came down to – we thought we were tied when time ran out, and I was actually up by 1 point. But tried a new list out. It was fantastic. It just awesome fun. So I think it was 15-14 chance engagement. So chance encounter. So.
Well, I think that's awesome. That there's some of these new list rules and the new points changes has kind of updated us and made it so that we want to play different things. I know I spent Friday night putting away 80% of my old cards and getting out a bunch of new cards, minus my separatist list. I rebuilt it with my Kyber Cup stuff, but I left that intact. Other than that, I actually will be playing on Monday a Rebel list. Who would have thought? That's not typically a Chris thing. And I put together a Rebel list that I thought would be fun. And no, it doesn't have Fen Rao and the Sheathapede, though. Charles would tell me he hates Fen Rao, but there's been a surprise. Fen Rao actually might be good now. Who knew?
Yep. Turns out I6 coordination is really good.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's just crazy to me. But anyway, so good for Fen Rao that he's actually able to be a part of something again. Anyway, other than that, the only other real big update is we want to remind everybody, if you are in Florida or know people that are in Florida and you would like to join our in-person tournament that JJ is putting on for Planning Phase Syndicate, it is July 9th, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep. The Planning Phase Syndicate Showdown. Come on down.
And GSP will be down there streaming it. So I think we have almost a third of the slots lined up for it, and later this week JJ and I will be putting out some different stuff to show you what the prizes are. So we're going to build a little bit of a graphic slide for you, and we'll do a little short podcast where we kind of talk through the different prizes, what you can win, what's going to be raffled off, and try to get everybody up to capacity. Anyone have anything else? Any other updates on your life?
No, just had a fun league night that we managed to patch together and stream live on Wednesday. That was a lot of fun playing in person over there at the FLGS where the event is going to be held. That was a very, very close game too. Lost by 1 point on stream after we recalculated everything, but that was a ton of fun. Hopefully we can get a few more in person like streams like that. Those will be really fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that being said, why don't we move on to kind of talking. Oh, JJ, I'm sorry. You had something you wanted to talk ahead of time about a new ship that is
Yes,
coming out.
that's right. Yes,
So
thank you
why
for
don't we do
reminding me.
that first?
So, so this came out from a unboxing video that one of the YouTubers, Krabok, had posted for the unboxing of the Outer Rim expansion. Now, if you're not familiar with that is, Outer Rim is a board game done by FFG, where you basically play the role of a bounty hunter and you're trying to collect bounties and compete against other players to gain fame from your actions that you do as that character there. Now, in this expansion, they added a bunch of new pilots as well as new, rather characters as well as new ships. And one of the ships that they added on here is the Airy, which is yeah, just for a little background. This ship was actually originally planned to appear in Solo as the carrier ship for Enfys Nest, where they actually would have deployed a lot of those speeder hauler things that they were fighting Han and the crew in that ice train planet thing, but it never made the cut. And according to lore, this was actually scavenged from B-wing parts, and I think they scrapped it just because the timeline wise it didn't fit correctly for that. But nonetheless, this is the ship that Enfys Nest would pilot for her faction on this year. So normally for like this type of artwork to be like commissioned and everything like that, it has to be approved through Lucasfilm for them to like put out this kind of graphic, and then they tend to use this graphic across all the Star Wars IPs. Typically, if you see something in Armada or Imperial Assault or Legion or X-wing, it will appear in some of the other stuff that Asmodee covers. So this is a possible new ship that could be coming over to X-wing in the future, and it's really exciting to see a new ship like this.
Cory, do you play Imperial? I don't play any of the Outer Rim games, and I never have. So have you ever played those?
No, I've heard great things about them, but not played one personally.
So what do you think about this ship then? Do you feel this could be another edition? And I guess if it's Enfys Nest, what even faction would that fit in? Does that just become an automatic scum ship?
I would think so. Although I would, to be honest, with seeing what they did with the Gauntlet, I almost wonder if we'll start to get some groups of ships that could be multi-faction
Yeah,
that aren't necessarily associated with one particular. And I think that's a way to bolster sales as well as, just I love having a Gauntlet be, a cross faction. I feel like the value of that ship is fantastic.
yeah,
And stuff like Resistance needs help, right? Like Resistance doesn't have a whole lot to pull from except for that last scene where everything was there. So
hmm
having ships that are kind of more obscure be a part of something like Resistance or whatever would be pretty fantastic. So that might be a direction that they could go as kind of more of a universal ship would be really cool.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with this being cross faction with Rebel and Scum. Kind of similar to how the Scourge was when it was released in X-Wing at 1.0, when it had Captain Nim for both Rebel
Mm-hmm.
and Scum with different abilities. This definitely fits the bill for it. As far as the size wise, I would call this probably a medium base at the smallest, but this could definitely fit like a large base as well if it's meant to be like a carrier for smaller smaller little like raiders like that. And if we're adding that in, then it could be similar to like the commandos for like the Mandalorian commandos. Like you could deploy like those little raiders to go either attack other ships or try to grab objectives, which could add another element to the game. So that could be something interesting.
Now on Wikipedia, it had Galactic Empire as being affiliation. Is that not the
Oh,
case for the Airy?
no, this one was specifically, oh, at least the area itself was
Okay.
specifically run by Emphasis Nest. Now, the generic kind could be an Empire ship, which they could make that as cross faction. So, in terms of X Wing, the Airy could be a title that could be assigned only to either the Scum or the Rebellion like ship.
Gotcha.
I think that would be cool. The other thing that somebody brought up was if you look here at this Magna Guard, there is this G9 rigged class light freighter. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That was at the top of this Magna Guard. Now, I haven't been around long enough to know if we see something in one of these arts, does that mean we're going to get it? I don't know.
Usually it does.
Yeah, I was going to say it usually does, yeah.
So somebody was speculating a little bit on this, and then I thought, I don't like the look of this ship at all, personally.
It's ugly.
I think this is the worst looking ship in the world. But hear me out. Think about it this way. If it was even a medium base, and see here where you have your wing, and you have that weird little gun that's on the side. Can you imagine if you had a medium base and then another base right next to it? Or maybe it fits on a large base, but really what it is a medium base and a small base together, and you had two different firing arcs, and you wouldn't have, it would be like two fixed firing arcs, and then you would get something where it would allow you to double tap or do something with it or equip a cannon to it or something.
See, the way I would see the ship is definitely a medium base. It would be a turret, and it also have primary front arc as well.
Right.
And it would actually have S-foils as well on a medium base ship, which is something that we haven't seen before. I mean, I could see this as a single crew carrier for medium base, and probably have like a cannon upgrade slot. I can see that. But it'll be interesting to see like a ship archetype like that that we haven't seen before, a medium base with a turret and the foils. So
yeah, I would see maybe it could also be like a jump master where it's got a cannon slot out of the front.
Ah, yeah.
And then it's got a 2-die rotating turret. Maybe even a single like the jump master. So kind of mimicking that.
Yeah. I don't know. That would be, I think that would be extremely beneficial and fun. I don't know. I was kind of excited. Somebody posted that in one of our X-Wing groups. I have no idea which one, but, and so I pulled that out of there, and I thought I'd bring it up to the team tonight because it's like, oh yeah, I kind of want to know a little bit about that. So,
I mean, Anakin did mess with it all the way through Clone Wars. So,
yeah, Clone Wars. Yeah.
By the end, I'm sure it was in, pretty good, even though it was ugly. So
he never had time to paint it. That's why. Yeah.
And they always had droids, on it. So I mean, it was R2D2 crew, but it'd be interesting if it, had a droid slot in it, which would be kind of interesting for a larger base ship too. So
yeah.
That would be really cool. All right. Well, why don't we jump in really quick into our discussion about, I guess it's not a discussion, but the breakdown of all the different factions from the X-Wing UK Open. I believe there was 74 players there this weekend, out of however many they could have. So I think they were scheduled to have like up to 160 slots, and they had 76 of them or 74 of them show up. Here is your faction breakdown. You have First Order at 10, 17 Empire, 18 Rebellion, 8 Resistance, 9 Scum, 9 Republic, and only 4 Separatists. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, and they're playing with the new rules, right? Or the new points as well.
The new points, the new rules, everything.
But no new ships.
Oh, they didn't allow the new Scum ship?
Oh, okay.
Right. That's something that I think skewed this a little bit is we didn't get they didn't have the Cad Bane and the Rogue class in there. So.
Oh, okay. All right. But they did use all the new points though, correct though?
New points and new rules. Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of crazy too, because that's a lot of that's huge, right? This is the first big tournament that we've had that's had more than, let's say, 20 people at that has used all these new points. So
right.
All right. So why don't we talk about the top 8? And here's where so they did not use, for whatever reason, TTT for the top breakdown. I have no idea why. It doesn't make any sense to me, but they did not use that for the breakdown. So with that being said, we have a couple of lists that I will have posted at the end that I'm not 100% sure which ones were in the top 8 and which ones were in the top 4. So, because they only were able to show, I only was able to watch the 4 streams.
Yeah.
But let's talk about our winner, Martin Shivers. And JJ, you want to run that list down?
Sure. Give me just a second here. My computer's frozen. Sorry.
That's fine.
My bad.
All right. So it is a TIE Fighter Swarm with Howl Runner, Crackshot, Swarm Tactics, Mauler with Crackshot, Jamie Beam, which is kind of that's hilarious because you never see a Jamie Beam on a TIE Fighter. Scourge with Crackshot, Gideon with Crackshot, Discipline, and Precision Ion engines. Iden Versio with Crackshot, Disciplined, Precision Ion engines. 1 ISB Jingoist with Contraband, and a Wampa with Discipline. So what are your guys' thoughts on this list here?
So I find it very interesting that the way that he equips Gideon and Iden to have Disciplined equipped when he has Howl Runner to assist with the rerolls. Almost seems like overkill. I mean, I guess that in the event that if your ships kind of get separated, it does allow for at least like making like smaller swarms to kind of converge instead of having one giant swarm just go in. So it does allow for that strategy to happen. Precision ion engines, though, on TIE fighters are really, really good because you can choose the direction you want to go. Instead of doing the 3K, you can do that sloop instead, which makes it a lot easier for your TIE fighter to execute that maneuver without being blocked and still have a shot onto that ship here. But I'm actually. It's nice to see a TIE Swarm actually make it all the way up. I mean, I can't remember this last time when we've seen a TIE Swarm do so well in a tourney. It's been a long time.
Cory, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's. I thought it was a pretty cool list. TIE Swarms have always scared me to death. I still have kind of flashbacks to a tournament I was in where I thought I did everything right and it still just got wiped off the board with it. So I think the Discipline is interesting because it does allow some separation. I think that's one of the hard things in 2.0, 2.5, the whole self-bumping, with your friendly ships, that it does give you a little bit more space. And I think the Crackshot in that amount of quantity is scary. I know that was a key thing in the game for winning that game for him, is just being able to push that damage through with the Crackshots was pretty crazy too. So I think it's really clever. I think it's very scary.
Awesome. All right. So the next gentleman was, I call him Bart. I don't know how to say his full name. I apologize.
Yeah. Bartaj.
Bartaj. He's actually for the Poland team, the Poland XTC team, and he's actually been on our stream last year once or twice. We had him on when he was doing his XTC games, and he is the only 6-0 player.
Yeah, he's a very, very good player. I mean, just watching a lot of his XTC matches from last year, he is a very, very good player, and this list can definitely do a lot of work here. So the list that he has here is a Rebel Alliance list. He has Wedge and T-65 with Marksmanship, Predator, Proton Torpedoes, R3 Astromech with the foils, Luke Skywalker with Proton Torpedoes, Afterburners, and the S-foils. Fen Rao making an appearance in the Sheathapede shuttle since they dropped his points. He's starting to get out there and list. Equipped with the Child and R4 Astromech, and then Colby Sperato with Notorious, R4 Astromech, Contraband Cybernetics, and Severmotor S-foils. Really solid list here.
Cory, what are your thoughts? I'm not a Rebel player, so
I think it's super scary. Colby, I think for 4 points is one of the better 4-point ships right now in X-Wing, in my opinion. I just think it's a great ship. It's cool to see it being used. It's interesting. Proton torpedoes, I think it's a good choice. I wish they would go up in points. I just think they're a little bit crazy. Some of the spike damage and that kind of thing. I did find that I think his Wedge and Luke build-outs, though, from what I've seen, this is very different from other ones that are out there. With some of the loadouts that they've been doing with especially Luke. Like I've got a Luke Skywalker list, and I went for safety, so I've got like elusive and brilliant evasion and other stuff like that to keep them alive. But this is a very aggressive list and pretty scary.
Yeah, this is nothing but attack. If you watch any of the streams he was on, he's insanely aggressive with this list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did find the choice of afterburners instead of trick shot, shatter shot on Luke to be really interesting, considering the type of list that he was running. Because if you do set it up correctly, that is a potentially 6 damage that you could push onto an enemy with trick shot and shatter shot with proton torpedoes. And then if they're shooting back at you, that is an additional die for defense that you're rolling for Luke, which makes him very, very defensible. But getting those afterburners, you can really push the limit and get that boost, and then hopefully get into a target lock at I-5. If not, Fenn Rau can assist you with that target lock at I-6 if they're not in range. So yeah, very good.
Yeah, you mentioned that trick shot, shatter shot. I don't believe that was ever intended to be together, obviously, because we used to only have talent and force. And I'm really nervous for what the correction to that is going to be, because it needs to come at some point. But it makes me sad because I really like that ships can have a talent and a force slot. It makes sense to me. But there's some abuse that was never intended to be there that is now coming through. And that combo, I saw a concussion missile from Ahsoka that was trick shot, shatter shot, concussion. And all of a sudden it's a 5-dice concussion missile. And there's no hope of doing damage back to Ahsoka at that point, because she's range 3 through a rock. Like, you're never going to touch that ship.
And she could shoot it 3 times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. So, but solid list. If you're going in a tournament, he went with all guns blazing, and obviously it worked really well for him. So.
Yeah, I do like the inclusion of the child on the list too, just to give Fenn Rau those passive mods to help him really just focus on coordinating. And then if they do decide to come attack him, he does have that passive mod with the child to help him survive. And even though if they get a lock on him, that's fine. The rest of his ships are going to be safe. And if you're putting all your effort into taking out an I-6 coordinator, that's only worth 4 points. The rest of this list is going to come around and get you. So like it's good.
What's your thoughts on the child versus K2SO? Because like, to me, that's the route I would have gone, because I could take it myself, but you could also pass it off to Wedge, if you needed to coordinate something else, like maybe Colby.
So the limitations, while I think that K2SO is a worthy inclusion as an alternate to the child, the one thing that gives it a drawback is that stress, right? Because if you're, especially in the beginning, if you're going very aggressive on turn 1, giving off that stress onto a T-65 that only has the fastest as a 2 straight blue is going to limit their potential to go up to be aggressive. So I think that in this case, for the way that Bartosz likes to play, I think the child was the better call for his play style. But if you're not going to be as aggressive, then K2SO all the way. Absolutely.
Cool.
All right. One of our top 4, Edward Moreland. Cory, you want to run this list down?
Sure. I'm surprised you didn't take it, though, with it being Separatists. Your baby.
I messed it up. I messed them up. That's why. Yeah.
So we got Django Fett in the Fire Spray, Lone Wolf, Savage Press for the Force, Thermal Debts false transponder codes, delayed fuses, Slave 1, veteran tail gunner. We've got Grievous with outmaneuver, impervium plating, and soulless 1. And bombardment drone with proxy mines, delayed fuses, and landing struts. DFS 081, Vulture with Discord, independent calcs, and then Separatist drone with Discord, grappling struts, and independent calculations.
Yep. And this is an interesting list in of itself, because usually you see Django and a bunch of droids. And actually, if we go back to even before 2.5, if you remember, Corey, we were testing Django Fett and just droids that I was going to run with the Crossroads event.
Yep.
And that was what I wanted to run, was that specific list to some extent, but I just couldn't get it to be viable enough. So this is interesting, but it is Grievous, right? And I think in an objective world, Grievous is better than having 2 more droids, personally. I
had a list really similar to this. I didn't go without maneuver on Grievous, but I actually gave up the bombardment drone and the Separatist drone for Cad Bane. But same ships. So Django, Grievous, Cad Bane, and then DFS 081 as a list that I was pretty excited about. It'd be really fun to fly, I think.
Yep. Now, the only thing I would say here is if it were me, I probably would get rid of the thermals and maybe put proxies on there, and dump the slave or the delayed fuses. I think that's how I would go about it, but that's just me. That's a personal taste, I think. And notice what's not in this list. No Dooku.
Yep.
There's 0 Dooku in this list.
So Vajra Press is still 10 points, right? On
yes.
For points. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's the right call. You get much more things added on to Django, and you still have that force. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and again, if you could argue dumping Lone Wolf and then putting Dooku on there instead, but I just feel that this is more powerful.
Now, can Savage give the droids a calculate when they stress?
I believe so, yes. And hold on, let's look it up. Maybe we just look it up. I believe he can, though, yes.
It just says when they take a stress, they can take a focus, right?
Yeah, because I think it's gain. Yeah. The wording is gain on it, but I'm not 100% sure.
So essentially, the droids can do a barrel calculate and then get a focus on top of that. So they can shoot off their Discord missiles and still have a focus token to mod their shot after they get off the Discords.
Yep. And it's an interesting choice that he chose Discord instead of the energy shell.
Yeah.
Though I will tell you, on my Kyber Cup list, I have energy shells over Discords too. I only have 2 Discords and 3 energy shell shots. And I will tell you, in my Kyber Cup game this week, when I was shooting specifically at not Vizier. What's the other one that's popular? Vizier. What's the other 5.1? Reaper. Vermeil. Being able to shoot a range 2 and change one of those to a crit, I don't know. That was pretty good. And Vermeil's taking crits, dropping crates,
Yeah.
Those energy shells going down in points to 4 are they become a buy. They really do. They really are a buy. And you can take them on those holochrome prototype droids.
Yeah. And
so,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I had a tangent.
So what I was going to say about Discord missiles is that even though that their agility went down to 1, even if you're using them, that's still a shot that's going into a something that's not your ship, and it's going to cause your opponent to either deal with it or take a crit, which on salvage run they're going to absolutely do that, and that's going to save your own cargo carrier from taking a potential crit. And I think that they have a lot of value still, even though they only have 1 agility. which is still great. And I think that's much more of a defensive tech now more than offensive for the Separatists. And I still think that it is still just depending on your list. I still think it's still a good inclusion to add on to your list, with energy shells being the other option as well.
Yeah. Just going to throw out a quick tangent with the Savage Oppress thing I didn't think about is if you had bombers barrel rolling to get locks, taking stress, and then you could give them a focus, so a double modded whatever they shoot.
Yep.
I had never thought about that, but that would be a pretty interesting use of Savage.
I think the reason this gentleman went with the bombardment is for the I3.
Mm-hmm.
But you're 100% right. You can put a Bactoid droid. It is an I1, but it has an extra loadout point on it, and you can run different types of missiles on there that you are not able to run on other things. So, yeah, I think Savage, we said this before Savage came out, we believe Savage will be an underutilized and underrepresented, and I think now that they aren't going to we know they're not going to lower Dooku on us, I think that Savage is going to become a choice crew guy.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think he's a guy. All right. Ali is... So, again, I apologize. I don't know who else was in the top 4. But we're going to go with Ali's list next.
Yeah, Ali was in the top 8, and she lost to Bartage in the first round there.
Very close game, though.
Yeah, it was a very close game. So this is a Rebel Alliance list. He has Ahsoka Tano with Shattering Shot, Trick Shot, and Concussion Missiles, like we were talking about earlier. Ezra Bridger in the TIE Fighter with K2SO. Wedge with Predator, Elusive, Proton Torpedoes, and R4 Astromech. And Luke Skywalker also with Shattering Shot, Trick Shot, Proton Torpedoes, R3 Astromech, and the S-Foils. So this is something that's definitely within Ali's wheelhouse. He does go for those really big shot type lists here. Normally I've seen him running with Hera B-Wing that can also shoot an I-6 with torpedoes and pass off that mod. But this is something very similar. You have 3 ships here that can hit very hard. Wedge just takes away your agility while he's shooting a proton torpedo at you, and then Luke and Ahsoka can do that Shattering Shot, Trick Shot combo with Ordnance, which hits it very, very hard, especially if he has the initiative to shoot first. And then K2SO on Ezra, he can either keep it on himself and keep stress, and that gives him that extra mod that he needs with his ability, or he can also pass it off to most likely Wedge, who will need that Calculate to help mod the proton torpedo shot. And he just wants the elite ships. This is a list that absolutely is hunting other ships and objectives to prevent them from scoring objective points. Yeah.
Now, this is because Ezra lost points and can't take Leia anymore, right?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because otherwise you would not put K2SO on Ezra. You would put Leia.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking about this though, and I'm looking for places to actually put this Ezra in my list, because something I hadn't thought about is Ezra has the Force. K2SO gives out a Calculate, but you also have a white jam because of K2SO.
That's right.
And so Ezra, in a sense, is getting 3 actions a turn with this build. He's coordinating a Calculate. He's got his own Force. And then on top of that, if you run him in fast, if you wanted to, he's like Ahsoka used to run him in the CLT Jedi.
Yeah, with Chopper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you can just jam away, and you don't have to worry about taking it yourself. I think that is I didn't see him use that. I didn't pay attention enough to catch that if he did. But I think for 3 points, the amount of utility you get out of that ship, I am really excited to try that out. That jam, I think, could be just...
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the next 3 lists, and again, I apologize, one of these was in the top 4. I don't know which one. But we have a appearance of Mr. Vader in the X1 with Brilliant Evasion, Elusive, Pattern Analyzer, Fire Control System, and Afterburners. Rexler Brath with Juke, Fire Control, and HLC. Vizier in the Reaper with Palpatine, and then Wampa with Predator. Which I'm not sold on Wampa with Predator. To be honest with you, I sometimes think Elusive would be better for him, but I could see why you could use it. I just don't know how often you're getting the bullseye off on an I-1, that's all.
Yeah,
I don't
not
know.
very much.
I guess you could use Palpatine to roll him, right? I guess there's that. You could always do that.
Yeah, that's true.
I never thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, you could also set up your Reaper to go as a blocker, right? To like deny repositions for your target that you're trying to get over at Wampa, but you're also Wampa is very reliant on not getting shot, so that way he could get that third dice. So I mean, it's a give and take. I kind of agree with you with Elusive on Wampa versus Predator, but hey, he made it to the top 8 there. So
thoughts, Cory?
Yeah, I've been looking. I think you mentioned it, Chris, that Vader in the X1. So I've been, playing around with some stuff too. I think I'm interested to see what can happen with it. It's interesting that the afterburners is people feel like it's got to be there. I've been playing around with ideas with not having afterburners, but it again, it's going to hit super hard. That Vizier Palpatine for 4 points. Again, you look at some of these value ships. Colby's a great one. Ezra at 3 points is a great one. Vizier with Palpatine is obviously just a fantastic deal. That's pretty crazy. So I think it's super solid. It looks like a fun list. Lots of tools, which is the other thing I like. And Vader and Rexler look like they'll be very difficult to do anything to. And if they shoot Wampa, you're like, it's fine. It's 2 points. Maybe the Predator is there just to be like, I'm more threatening than I am. Because you want him to draw fire, right? Like you don't want Vader and Rexler taking hits.
Exactly. Yeah. And you 100% want people to shoot Wampa. That's what you want. You want somebody to kill Wampa because he's 2 points. That's it.
Yep.
Now, can you imagine if they gave Wampa a illicit slot like the Jingoist, and you put Dead Man Switch on him?
Oh man!
Yeah, jeez. Shoot me, and y'all get a hit.
Yeah, that's good. I do like. I do agree with you with afterburners on Vader. What I've been seeing recently with the X1s is the Bree Gambit on Vader, which gives them access to the evade. Nice. And that makes him a lot more defensive. Having that evade and force to back him up on defense. It's a really tough Vader to kill. Yeah.
Now that debris gambit though is red though, correct?
Yeah, unless you're range one of an obstacle, which at that point then it turns into a white evade. So typically, especially now since you're not scoring on the first round, the Imperial player can kind of pick and choose where they want to go and which path they want to go with Vader, and then they just can make those tighter turns around obstacles to ensure that they're always at range one of an obstacle to get that evade. The game that I played on Wednesday, that player who had that Vader build out, pretty much every turn he got debris gambit off every turn.
Nice.
And it was a very tough Vader to kill.
All right, the next list that we had was Nels Dietrich with a Galactic Republic list. Cory?
So I am glad I got to call this guy out. I saw this on stream and I want to play it so bad. Anakin Skywalker, Delta 7, Predator, R2-D2, and CLT, Obi-Wan, Delta 7 with Predator calibrated laser, and Shield, Hound with Yoda, 7th Fleet, and Agile, and then Mace Windu with heightened perception, R4, P17, and CLT. I think it was, I saw a thing where he put everything in front of Wedge and they just nuked Wedge right off the board. It was bonkers seeing this thing work and how aggressive you can be with a bunch of little 4 health Jedi ships. It was really, really cool to see. It wouldn't be the exact loadout I would do, just because I like my lats to be gunships. But this was a really cool list. Seeing Mace go up to I7 is pretty devastating as well, with the heightened perception. So you've got 3 really heavy. If you get on bullseye, you're just taking a world of hate. So.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised now, right? Like, I think that since the new points update, I've been seeing the ship count drop, because, we normally used to seeing Republic run as a 5-ship list. Seeing now the more higher aces running on a Republic list like this, seeing Anakin Skywalker come back, it's actually pretty good to see the new variants with it. I do like the idea of having Mace Windu with heightened perception and then Yoda on Hounds to help him shoot at I7, still retain all his force, and then get boosted with 7th Fleet Gunner to really punch in a shot onto an enemy, and then having Anakin come in as cleanup with his shot, and then Obi-Wan as well if he happens to be in there. Really, really good. So yeah.
Yeah, that one was on stream. I'd really recommend the initial just smash face that he did. It was so cool. So.
All right. The next one is Andy Cameron. JJ?
All right. So Andy Cameron here, running something very similar to Ollie's Pucknell's list here. Rebel Alliance, starting with the Wedge with Elusive, Predator, Proton Torpedoes, R4 Astromech. Luke with Shattering Shot, Trick Shot, Proton Torpedoes, R3. Astromech Ahsoka in the A-Wing with Shattering Shot, Trick Shot, and Concussion Missiles, and also Ezra Bridger and the TIE Fighter with K2SO. Pretty much the exact same list that Ollie Pucknell ran as well. Really offensive, can definitely delete ships really easily, and get points off of those fallen ships. Your opponent's ships can't score objectives and they're dead. So it's really good.
Yeah, I think this is very similar. We could kind of move on.
Yep.
The last one is Benjamin Lee. And he has Vader with Evasion, Elusive, Pattern Analyzer, Fire Control, and Afterburners. 7th Sister, who got a bump with Brilliant Evasion, Elusive, Crack Shot, Fire Control system, and Concussion Missiles. Vizier with Empire Pelp, and then 2 Jingoists with Contraband Cybernetics.
This is pretty cool because it replaces the... doesn't this replace the Vader Defender with Vader and 7th Sister for kind of 2 higher end ships, right? And you lose a TIE Fighter as well, but I think it's a pretty cool option. So
now I was taking a look at this, and at first I was like, I don't know if I would take 7th Sister over 5th Brother, but 7th Sister having 4 loadout points more than 5th Brother. I think that's a bigger deal, especially since for 5th Brother, he no longer has access to auto blasters. So his only options for cannons would be either Tractor or HLC, and then that's it, or a jamming beam. If he just wants to just fill up the slot. So he doesn't have much for options in terms of having that secondary weapon versus 7th Sister, who can easily fit concussion missiles and a bunch of other stuff.
Man, trying to kill that ship with Brilliant Evasion and Elusive is, oh my gosh, that would just be a nightmare.
Yeah, and if you manage to get Crack Shot off and 7th Sister's ability, that's pretty much 2 evades that are going. They're just gone. They're gone.
Yeah, and plus you got Palpatine backing him, and Vader set up pretty much the same way. You got Palp backing him up on top of that. So, what do you do against that to try and kill it?
And then Jinguist giving out strain on top of that. Oh my gosh, jeez.
Yeah, it's a cool list. I think there's some really nice creativity there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I think that is all of the lists that we have here, specific. And what I wanted to do is kind of move into a little bit more of a discussion of, and I apologize for the laggy video, but what I wanted to do is move into a little bit more of a discussion on the concept of list building with the new points, but with kind of more of a discussion around the difference between one ship versus another ship. And so let me lay out the foundation, and then y'all can kind of jump in and talk amongst yourselves. So essentially what I wanted to do is because what they tried to do is take a lot of the points and make them very similar. So for example, Vader used to be 64 points in the X1, I think. Yeah. And right. Divided by 10. So everything was divided by 10, right? You know, so he became an 8-point ship or a 7-point ship, but here's a bunch of loadout points. And the idea here is if you look at lower initiative ships or some of the ships that have less of a fancy ability. So Vader could take up to like 4 actions in a turn with his force if he really wants to, right? But then you're force starved. And so the idea here would be native ability versus adding loadout points to make your ship worth it. So for example, Contrail is a decent ship by himself without any loadout points. And at 2 points, he was a steal. Now at 3 points, you all of a sudden get loadout value, plus you get him and you get to put him in a list. Though we just saw that nobody's using Contrail the same way, right? But that doesn't mean he's unvaluable. And I think, you know, here's the kicker. When those loadout points come out, to some extent, if they don't buff your ship that much, they're kind of useless. And I guess we could pick, to some extent, like Fen Rao, for example. Fen Rao used to be 68 points in 2.0. Now he's 7. He gets 18 points of loadout value. But in the past, Fen Rao, you would not run Fen Rao with 1 million upgrades, right? Because if you did, he'd be worth 75, 80 points. But do those 18 points of loadout actually give him that much intrinsic value for the 7 points? Or am I better to say I'm going to run 2 M3As, or I'm going to run 1 M3A and I don't know, do they have 4-point Cad Bane ships or the Rogue class ships? I don't know if they do or not.
I don't believe so. No, I think they're all 5 points.
Do they have anything that's 4
I
points?
thought there was one that was 4.
Okay. So there you go. So
one of the factions does, I think.
Well, I know Separatist does, actually.
Right.
Yep, because there's a list I've been playing with Magna Guard. That would be, I think.
Really good. Yeah, Magna Guard. Yep, you're right.
But, you know, so anyway, so when we talk about that 7 points, like Vader used to be 11 points and in the Defender, and now he's 9 points in the Defender, and all of a sudden we're seeing him. Now he's showing up. He's able to do a lot of work because he got a talent slot. And so I think, you know, one of the big discussion points here is do loadout points in turn help some of these lower initiative ships, but really do nothing to some of the higher initiative, bigger, bad, evil ships that we, you know, kind of see around. And again, like I said, for example, Wedge is a pretty aggressive ship on its own. Let's say they raise proton torpedoes up to 16 points, which I think we could talk about what's a fair price, but really 15 to 16 points is probably what they're worth in this meta. But Wedge can run plasmas, and plasmas is like a mini proton for Wedge. Yes, the crits don't hit the same way, and that's the downside. But for 7 points, I could run plasmas and have all these other options to put on Wedge. But really, there's nothing. What else do you put on Wedge? You might as well just put a proton torpedo on him, you know, now. And in our 2.0 world, we had to be very choosy in our loadout. And I feel that the AMG devs have kind of started to curtail and bring in and start to rein in some of these loadout costs. Hence why Maul in the Gauntlet does not have 28 loadout points anymore. And can't run 1 million. Like, he can't fill every crew slot with every amazing crew in the world, right? He can't run Jabba and Zam now if he wants to. Which that was a combo nobody ever used, but that was a pretty good combo too, by the way. Anyway, so So that's kind of what I wanted to discuss about. Can we move? Let's move into that segment, because to me, I think a big discussion point and with list building, and this is where I get excited, because this is where we talk about list building. And JJ and I covered some of the lists that we've been building last week, right? And I feel that this is an important key, especially when we talk about building scenarios, because with the scenario changes, they have reduced some of the one scenario where basically it's grab your objectives and run away and you win the game, pretty much. They've changed that scenario. So we're seeing them move these scenarios a little bit more towards forcing engagement for actually killing things, which is what they claimed that was the original intent. So how does you, and maybe we'll start with Cory. Cory, how do you feel that some of these loadout points and these different things, how do you feel that this plays into this discussion piece? Here with employee, I want to say employee, but they're not employees of us, with pilot abilities versus loadout point costs.
Yeah, so I think you've got a really valid point with some pilots. Like I think of Kylo Ren in the Silencer. I put brilliant evasion on him, and that's all I would ever do in the past. I don't think he needs anything else. I know some people would disagree with that. And I would agree on Fen Rao. Like I just don't think, a lot of times you're like, I don't want to put a missile or a torp or something on these because I just don't need it. But I think there are some pilots, like one of my favorite pilots for some reason is Elo in the T-70. I think it's a super cool pilot. He always got killed because I never had, or he didn't do enough on offense. But now I can put BB-8 Astro on him, Predator and Heroic, and I forgot what else I put on him. But I can put enough stuff so that he's defensive and offensive, and he can do some more shenanigans with movement. So I'm really excited about probably Monday, tomorrow, trying him out with some loadout points that make him feel like he is the ace, the kind of the cool pilot that I want him to be. But I do fall into the trap sometimes of other pilots where I'm like, I don't need all these things. I've mentioned before that I wish you could get a maybe a 6-point commander or a flyboy Poe and a 7-point version of him. One of them had like 2 points of loadouts, and the other one had 16, 20, whatever it is, to kind of deal with some of the situations you're talking about. Like, what if you could get Fen Rao cheaper, but with no loadout points? So I think some pilots, as you pointed out, that have a really good ability, and they're just a really good chassis, and it just happens to work really well, they don't need all the fancy stuff. And then I think other ones, I think really need those abilities to make them feel special and unique, and being able to do something with them. So
JJ, your thoughts, initial thoughts.
So just taking a look at the initial points release when 2.5 was released and how it is now, it feels like they're starting to get a better grasp on reining in the points. I think what's hurting them currently right now is that there's still certain upgrades that can be spammed across the way. I mean, if you take a look at proton torpedoes, which is the one that we're taking a look now, it feels like there's still the possibility for a lot of ships to still carry that particular ordnance, right? And I think that in order to balance the loadout points across like the same chassis for different pilots that can be put in a list, is to limit the amount of times that they can appear in a list. And one of the things that they haven't done as of yet is use the restricted list to add potentially really powerful upgrades to limit them to a single occurrence or make them limited in a particular list. So that way you force the other ships inside of the same list to use other different types of ordnance. You still have the ability to give those ships a good amount of loadout points to still have those upgrades, but just make them different, make them feel different from it. So that way you're not running, the same list with 3 potential very hard hitting like torpedoes like that, and not have to worry about trying to balance that out by restricting or lowering the loadout value across the board for each of the ships for the potential of them having that particular upgrade, right? The other part of it too is with generics as well, something that we haven't seen in terms of their worth. It's been a little bit better now since the initial release of the points. Is, you know, a lot of the generics still don't have a good enough amount of upgrades, or even upgrade slots where they can invest points into it. And if you want to at least make them slightly more valuable, just inherently raising that loadout value to make them an option to be used, so that way they can at least have some sort of upgrades to at least be able to compete with some of the named pilots without being able to spam. I think it's something that needs to be balanced as well as part of their costs for being lower in cost. If you take a look at the Rogue class starfighter, the generic one for CIS, I think that's a very good ship at 4 points, and I think that could have a lot of potential in it, compared to the 5-point versions of the named pilots. But most of the time, you're going to be looking at, for 4 points, adding in either a Belbalab, a named Belbalab that could do a lot more work with more loadout points, or find an extra point somewhere and go to one of the named pilots because they have that loadout value. They get more value for having those loadout points, add a better initiative, or have an extra ability for that. And it's just finding that balance for that.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting, Cory. Your discussion point of Elo, right? I think that's a good pilot to pick on, right? So let's pick on Elo for a second here, because, you know, essentially what they say is after we reveal a red Talon, if you have 2 or fewer stress, treat it as white. So essentially you reveal it, it becomes white, you don't have any stress. Or if you have 1 stress, you can put Pattern Analyzer on them, right? There's enough points for that. And I think the deal is that red Talon, how often are you doing that? You're probably doing it once or twice a game, right? Like you could get it off at least twice, but you're probably not doing it even in a 7-round game every round. Maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you tell me, Cory. Would you do that every round or not? No. Should I be scared for Monday that every round you're gonna Talon this stupid Elo?
If he was knee numb, yeah.
If I'm gonna get pissed off at Elo as much as I hate. Do you have knee numb in your list too, by the way?
Yeah.
I'm not playing against you. You have to play against somebody else.
It's 4 T70s, so.
Gosh.
You know, it's one of those things that's interesting because the Talon roll is kind of interesting on Elo if he's an endgame ship. If you let him get to the endgame, his time on target is as good as a defender, which is pretty bonkers. So, and then like I was saying, like putting BB-8 Astro on him, all of a sudden he gets the barrel roll or boost before he does the Talon roll. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
When you think you can do a Talon roll, like boost to the right, Talon roll to the left, you know, some of the places you can end up is pretty awesome.
Well,
but
yeah. But that's what. But the point, going back to the point, like I feel though that's not something you're going to get off every round. That maybe 50% of your game, maybe. But I would wager you're not getting it off more than 3 times in a game.
I would 100% agree with you.
Okay. And whereas if we look at Vader, right? Vader, you're going to get off every round, every bloody round. Yep. Vader spends the force and gets an extra action. Vader Defender. Every round he gets to shoot, he's spending a force over his focus token. Every time. It's not even a question with Vader. And I think that's where we talk about where we could see some changes, right? And I don't want to say improvements. I really want to focus on differentiating that piece of it, because I feel if we talk about a lot of people, and so let me explain what kind of sparked this idea, right, of this discussion is I've had some people have stated they don't want to play 2.5. They don't like the list building. And I don't disagree to some extent that list building has become a lot more stagnant or static than back in the day when we could swap points around. And there has been an open discussion in the Discords about what if we mixed and put our specific loadout point values in a pool, right? And said this pool gets this much loadout. But I feel that by doing that, we actually would probably break the game more. Because, for example, with Elo, now Elo could take, instead of just this 11 points, this bloody ship can now take a proton torpedo or an advanced proton torpedo, right? It now has the points to be able to do a few other things that it didn't have before. And I feel that because, and again, this is where I talk about, like, this is what I'm saying is, like, I like to kind of compare this to 2.0 to 2.5. It is a different game, but we still have the same mentality. Like, we were list building a certain way, and now we're list building differently. But within making the changes to move us back to dogfighting, look at what we saw at the UK Open. We saw a lot of aggressive dogfighty lists, right? Because that's what people are used to. You're just used to that. We're not like JJ and just throwing stupid bombs because we're
that's
dirty reason. Cheaters.
That's what's the only thing that was keeping the TIE swarms away was the trajectory simile being B-wings. That was the only thing.
I disagree with you, but I don't think it was the B-wings. I think it was those bloody Jedi. That would the Jedi with missiles is what really scares those TIE fighters away more than anything else. And that's thematic, at least. At least that's thematic. But I think if we look at it and we talk through this, like, that's the big thing. Because if I gave all these loadout points and Elo was able to have 20 loadout points, can you imagine what, like, Elo's ability goes from once or twice a game to being the difference in that game to an extreme extent. Elo being able to have a target lock, do the barrel roll with BB-8, do the Talon, take a target lock and shoot a and it's got 2 talent slots. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to take outmaneuver, and I'm going to take advanced proton torpedoes, and I'm going to shoot a 5 dice shot into whatever ship you have, and you get 1 less agility. Merry Christmas.
Yep.
And that's what's interesting to me, right? And that's where we talk about these intrinsic value pieces, because Elo's intrinsic value is just not there. Like, I mean, it's there. Cory likes to play Elo, I guess, or we'll find out on Monday if he does. Not against me because I hate Needham. I'm gonna get stuck playing Cory. I already am feeling this stuckness.
Nice. I like putting this fear, this hatred in you.
I kind of did it first. I had to explain to him.
It's not you, it's JJ. Yeah, go ahead, JJ. Tell him the story. Tell him exactly what happened when you played Neonub against me.
So this was a time where Auto Blasters was still a thing. Okay. So Nenum with Auto Blasters, Marksmanship, Pattern Analyzer, and the Black One title. So I did a 3 straight into a 3 Talon to get behind his list. Or just to the side of his list, then I can use Pattern Analyzer to do the barrel roll focus to get right behind him, and then clear all my stress, take the ion to get the shot still, and then just pump in basically 4 crits right behind him. He immediately quit after that. And I had to rules lawyer the entire sequence for him, and it moved up to the top of his list of ships that he hates. So
don't worry, I'm not a huge Neon fan. I didn't jump on that bandwagon. I like Temin, Boosty Temin more. So,
and I agree with you. Boosty Temin is not broken. Boosty Temin is a free afterburners tenon. And so there you go. Hey, that's a good transition. We keep talking about resistance ships. Yeah. Damn it, Cory. It's all your fault.
That's all right. I like it.
But okay, let's talk about Temin, right? Because how many points is Temin?
5.
5. And he gets a free boost, right? But only at a certain speed.
You use it all the time.
No, I agree with you, though. And I 100% agree with that. Now, can you imagine if Temin had that plus all these other loadout? Because what is his loadout value? 12? I think he's 12, right?
Well, I used to be able to put heroic...
Nope, he's 11.
Shield and hull on him.
Okay, well, that's
Oh, and I think he had R6. He had R6 or his droid too. You could put all that on him at one point. So he was a 9 health T-70 with rerolls and heroic.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. He still died though, except for that one guy. There's one guy that couldn't kill his Temin ever. So okay, moving down that, Temin's boost gets off almost every turn, right? And again, let's move past resistance in a minute, just because I want to be a little bit more open in the factions. But Temin gets a free boost that you're saying, hey, I get off almost every round, and essentially, should he be worth more points? Because when we talk about 5 points, that's a quarter of your list. And do we have other ships, Jedi, that are 5 points and get a free boost every round? Temin's is almost more limited than a Jedi, and it almost feels like those Jedis should go up a little bit in price because Temin should come down, I guess. Because Temin gets a free boost, but his free boost is only between a 2 and a 4 maneuver. But in fairness, you're probably only doing a 2 and a 4.
The one thing I'll disagree with you there is that yes, while Jedi can do the boost every round, the only ones that are that price point are going to be the CLT, the regular Delta 7s, which are only 4 health, whereas a T-70 natively is 7 health. Yep. So it's a little different there. They can tank more shots, whereas you blank out with a Delta 7 and they could be gone. Poof, gone. The T-70 is a little more resilient to that. So I think that's where the balance in points is for the two, for being the same. At least that's how I would argue it, at least.
Yeah.
Now, what I would say, and coming off of the resistance, right, is taking a look at a chassis that's still very, very good, but has very different pilots in terms of like what their abilities can do. Taking a look at the TIE Reaper, for instance, right? You have Vermeil and you have Feroff, which are two very opposite type abilities. One is very offensive minded, one is very defensive minded, but they're both costed at the same amount of points, but they have different loadout values. If you take a look at Feroff, he's an initiative higher, and he has a lot more points with slots available that makes him more offensive for him, being able to convert a blank or a focus into a hit. But statistically, a defensive roll is less likely to roll a natural result. So you only have a 33% chance on defense green to roll a result, at least an evade result, which means that versus the 50% for red dice, you're going to see Feroff's ability trigger a lot more often than Vermeil's ability because of the percentages that are being rolled there. So you can say that you get a little more value in terms of the ability for Feroff when you're rolling dice. And when you compare that to Feroff, if you're going from all, I guess it would also depend on what type of list you're trying to build. Just the disparity between their loadout points there and also the slots that they have available to as well to like upgrade their ships. It almost feels like there could be more that could be added on to the other ship that to Feroff, that he was mainly a PALP carrier, but he can still carry other types of crew and still be an effective piece to safeguard certain objectives. He just doesn't have that same type of loadout value that would make him more effective or make you consider him over like Vermeil, for instance.
Yeah, and I think that's the big piece here, right? Because think about it, if let's say he just had 12, so he could carry PALP. Does his ability giving him too many loadout points underprice him though? Because and let's hear the argument here. Because he's an I3, by the time he gets to shoot, right? Most people have already shot. Most of the time, people are using their green mods to shoot at him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of fighting against like a defender or something that takes an evade, nobody cares, right? But how many ships take an evade all the time? That's not a high percentage of ships. Even Jedi don't take a bunch of evades. That's not like a thing that they do. Jedis will go for a focus or keep their force. That's what they want. They don't want the evade all the time. Now there is one Jedi. I'm trying to remember what that Jedi's name is, but there is one I think that does do that. You know, that's something that it does kind of do. But with Captain Farroth, being able to get you being able to change your result to a free evade means you never have to spend your mod on defense ever. And I know it's only one green die, but you never have to spend that mod. You never take an evade. You never do that. You just don't.
Yeah, you can either focus on jamming your enemy ships to prevent other mods, or you can go more offensive with them and make sure that you're spending your focuses on offense and making sure that you always have that particular mod to improve your offense. And if you're shooting behind an obstruction, giving him a second die or a range 3, that's even more value right there for Farroth to use his ability. So yeah.
So now, let's tie this all back together, right? Let's bring this all these little intricate pieces back together. And now we say, okay, when we talk about who we're gonna take and the style of list we're gonna build. And this is where we can open it up and we can have an open discussion across the different factions and say those different things. When you're building a list, do you consider that loadout value? So if I have 2 5-point ships, do I consider that loadout value, or am I going to should always be looking at the pilot ability first? And if the pilot ability triggers, let's say, 75% of the game, is that ship worth more? And we're going to go back to Resistance, for example, for a second. And because Cory actually brings a really good point up, and that's a really good really good piece to talk about, because Temmin and Elo both are 11 loadouts and 5 points. So when you're looking to build your list, no matter what style list, Temmin almost feels like becomes a fancy generic. He's an auto-include. I take Temmin because I'm getting that boost, which is just insanely great, especially because I can boost before I target lock. I can boost before I focus. I can boost before I barrel roll. Whereas Elo's ability is not giving you a chance every round. Temmin's going to trigger 75% of the game unless you are flying against a TIE Swarm or flying against a droid swarm and you're stuck inside of that little cluster of hell, which hopefully your Temmin's not. But that can happen, right? You know, whereas Elo would do better in that instance. But they have the same loadout points. Do you consider the pilot ability, if it triggers more than 75% of the time, to be greater than having a higher loadout points? So, Cory, the question's to you. And I'm sorry, I'm over speaking. I'm vomiting words here. But if I gave Elo another 7 points of loadout, would that be a big difference for you to consider taking him over Temmin? If you could only have one, would you consider, if there was more loadout points, taking him over a better pilot ability?
Yeah, but I think I would definitely, because I think with more loadout on Elo, then you can throw something on like Afterburners and say that kind of makes up for the fact that he doesn't have Temmin's boost, right? Elo he is a different initiative. He is an I-5 instead of an I-4, which is a big deal. And when you talk about looking at loadouts, I think it really depends on what you're doing. Like Temmin is fantastic at objectives because he can boost and then be at an objective and still take an action. Not many ships can do that in any of the games, right? Everybody takes boosts after they take an action, where Temmin gets to take a boost before he does his action, which makes him incredibly valuable in objective play. But you look at loadouts and you've got Elo, who has 2 talent slots. Well, some people love heroic, some people hate it, but being able to take Predator and heroic on a T-70, that's pretty awesome. That changed. I didn't realize they had done that. That changed it. So looking at loadout value, that's something that's very valuable to me on that ship. So it really depends on what the list is trying to do. I guess to come back to what you were saying, loadout value is an extreme amount of like what options are available are important, as well as pilotability.
Well, and but again, that's what I'm saying. Like, so at the current level, though, are you going to pick Elo over Temin in a list? Because they're identical outside of their initiative, right? So that initiative does add a little bit of a variance there.
I think it'd be a tough choice for me right now because I also look at time on target. Even if Elo's ability only goes off twice, that's twice in a game that I'm shooting when Temin is not. So I have to think about that. The time on target is pretty huge. The initiative 5 is pretty big in there as well, because you can put Temin, Neon, Commander Poe, and something else into a list. So you've got 2 I5s and an I6. That's a pretty big punch with a lot of health behind it. Again, if I'm having a more of a mixed list where I'm trying to scatter and not just punch things in the face, then I might look at Temin over Elo because I like Temin's ability to maneuver as good as an A-Wing and still hit as hard as a T-70. So he's typically my go-to, but it just depends on what the rest of the list is doing.
Fair enough. JJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree. Taking a look at like what you want to do with the list definitely influences what pilots you're going to take when it comes to considering their loadout value and their pilot ability. Typically, I tend to look at their loadout, the pilot ability first before loadout value, mainly because if I'm trying to have a ship fill a particular role in my list to make sure that I have that piece on my list for most matches. I want to make sure that the ability plus the potential loadout that can help supplement or boost that ability in particular is there available to make that particular ship effective without any help from any other ship on the list. If it comes down to that my ship needs additional help from a support ship, then at that point I'm considering a pilot that can be a lot more independent on its own versus a ship that needs help in order for it to become effective. The best example of this would be Volt Scaris for the Empire. Yes, his ability can be nice when you get it off reliably. Having that start of engagement action, especially on the TIE Fighter, to then link it into a barrel roll boost to completely outmaneuver or arc dodge or get into a shot with that particular ship can be a big boon. But in order for him to do it reliably and still get rid of his strain, he needs to be coordinated early on before his initiative. So if I'm taking a look at that particular pilot and now I need to make sure that I have a coordinator in my list, that cost now for 2 ships basically to get off that one single combo is much more expensive than a single ship that could be just 1 point more but is far more effective at handling its role in my list and being a lot more independent to now I may not need that coordinator in my list to pull off that same type of combo. So I do value the pilot abilities a lot more, and then loadout values as secondary whenever I'm considering a pilot in my list.
I think the new Z95s for the Republic is a great example of really making you have to choose a lot. They've got multiple initiatives, they've got great pilot abilities, and they also have very different loadouts. Like one of them even has a cannon, right? I think that's a great example of it's how you build your list. I think that's important. And JG, I think you were hitting on that is what is my list trying to do? And a lot of times I pick a couple key pieces, and then from there I'm trying to fill in what complements those key pieces in my list. Typically, I'm more thematic than I should be, and so there's pilots and things that I like, and so I will pick those and then fit things around what their abilities are or what that character or ship is going to do. And so it's not, I wouldn't say it's always pilot ability for me. Sometimes it's loadout. What can I put on here? what's its initiative or what is its pilotability? Is that going to complement what I'm trying to do with that list? So I think it is a lot more complicated than what it, than it's not as straightforward as it's one or the other for me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we wrap this segment up, is there anything else you want to leave with when it comes to this? I don't think we have time to actually go into building a bunch of lists today, but we could come back to that because I think this is an interesting discussion. And like I said, I think a lot of the things that people don't like, a lot of the changes, like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like the changes to how list building happens. And I think if we break down, what people's issue is to each of them and talk through it, I think there is a little bit more versatility in list building than we originally thought, right? And I think when they start to make the changes, I like for example, I have droids that can take cannons now. It would be nice if my ion cannon droids could be 2 points and not 3, because they never, especially now that you ban hull upgrade and they can't take hull upgrade. But I think that piece of that has created a newer development that we never had before. We never had, you didn't have, and if you look at V1s, you didn't have a uniqueness. Everybody wanted to build V1s the same. But now I can't, and I don't want Seven Sister to all of a sudden get a cannon slot. But maybe Seventh Brother should get a dual cannon slot. That'd be kind of cool. I would play Seventh Brother again, or Fifth Brother again, sorry.
Or we see Reva in a V1 eventually,
Or give me Reva in a V1 with a double cannon slot. Though, let's be fair, JJ, we've not seen Reva, I guess, spoiler alert, we've not seen her fly anything. So I don't want to hear about it until I see her fly something. Her
pilot ability will be ruthless, basically. She makes a friendly suffer damage to cause a crit,
Nah, I already got that card. Anyway, any last thoughts before we move off this?
I got 2 quick things. One, I think it's going to be interesting to see if AMG looks at which pilots we don't play and starts to give them loadout slots that other pilots that do get played don't have, to try and promote them. I think about like T70s. Again, I'm a resistance player. There's going to be a lot of T70s that don't see action because they're all 5 points just about. But you start giving them slots and just being crazy, throw bomb slots on a T70 on a
That's
particular
crazy.
one.
Stop.
I'm just saying that you would start to look at that one T70 differently than you would have before, right? So I think we're going to see some new things come out, like A-wings with cannon slots, or all these different things. I think T70s, they should take away the hard point and they should make it so this one shoots torps, this one shoots missiles, and whatever, to give them more variety. So you do make choices, right? But I will say, the other thing I wanted to say is just for all the people that are out there that are like, list building isn't as fun. I have so many tabs open on my system right now after this latest 2.5.5 update with the points where they took the highs down and the lows up. I think list building right now is one of the most fun it's ever been in ever of X-Wing to me. I'm really, really enjoying it with the being able to play Commander Poe or Trigger Happy Poe and be able to do some stuff with Elo that I never would have done before because he was just too expensive. That kind of thing. And all my lists I'm just having a great time right now. This latest change, I think, has been a pretty awesome shot in the right direction. It's been awesome. It's been really good.
Well, and I think Cory, that 2 things. One, it begs the question of going back to the discussion about loadout points and pilot value. We don't play some of these other pilots because their pilot ability just is meh. Mm-hmm. It just is. And so you could push this into there with some of these other things, with loadout points and changing it. And I will say, I believe personally that AMG, whether they listen to us or what's going on in the meta, they are 100% listening to some extent. And yes, I will 100% agree that they have one of the worst communication staff in the world. Like I feel that they should pay me $100,000 a year, and I will come work for them to actually help them communicate a million times better. But if you look at how they do, like they are listening, because we saw Vader come down, and I don't want to talk about Vader Defender because that's a big long discussion we don't want to have tonight. Because coming down to 9 points. Anyway, I have a Vader Defender list, by the way, that I'll be playing tomorrow probably.
You better not.
I do. It's you don't even. You could put 11 points a tie, by the way, bro, with a Vader Defender. Just think about that. But bringing Vader down from 8 points to 7 points is huge. We're now seeing him being played, and Vader's an iconic character, right? And for whatever reason, none of us hate Vader in the X1 like we do Vader in a Defender. Nobody seems to. Now give me Thrawn in a Defender, and I'll tell you what, then I'll always play Defender in every game I ever play, period.
I'm still waiting for Sabine the TIE Defender.
Yeah, give me... stop. No. Rebels do not get a Defender.
Free
no.
barrel a boost before she activates at I3.
There you go.
Nope. Shit, at this point, you could put Ezra in a Defender. Can you imagine a Force-driven Ezra Defender?
I would actually consider him for the TIE Elite side, upgrade for that. Sure. Yeah,
you're killing me. Anyway, so long story short, they are listening in some capacity. Whether it's the capacity we all agree with or not is up for debate. But they do listen a little bit because we did see a lot of tweak changes, and it's funny because Cory and I disagreed on some of the changes we wanted before they went live. So Cory and I had a pretty aggressive discussion about this, and it's kind of funny because AMG just went and did their thing, but they listened to some extent to what the community was saying and what the points are saying. So there is at least hope, in my opinion, that we will be able to see diversity and meta changes more often, and when they're needed, versus a blanket. It'll be here in 6 to 9 months.
Yep.
That's all
I do say I did hear something really positive too. Just speaking about that is some people might get latched onto the thing that they were trying to get everything perfect, like that was their goal. It's always their goal, but they also had the devs say, but that's an unobtainable goal, but it's still a goal we have, right? And that's a good thing to have that as a vision, but realize that it's pretty much impossible to get there. That doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It just means that you're striving to get things more balanced and better, but you know that things are going to have to change.
Yeah. And you know what, Cory? You know what? We need to have you back on, and we need to actually talk about game design, right? I think that's an important piece. I know that's probably going to bore a lot of people, but Cory is a game designer, right? Like, there is a piece of Cory that actually genuinely understands how game design works. I don't design games for a living. I don't know if I could or couldn't, but I sure as hell don't do that. Cory does that. And so, like, when we talk, and I guess I'll talk you up a little bit, Cory, because when we talk about these things, I take Cory's opinions into perspective. No matter how much I argue with him, I take it like aggressively into perspective, because Cory actually does this for a living. Like, not for X-Wing. He's not a secret X-Wing developer that nobody knows about. But Cory develops games, and so there is a design mechanic that goes into these things. And when I want to actually discuss crazy, strategic, weird things that come out of this, Cory's a guy I can go to and actually have this discussion, because he understands how a game is developed, even if he's not developing X-Wing specifically.
Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be great to kind of talk about that and see what questions people have of, looking at some of the crazy ideas of why things work and don't work, and even talking about points. People have said, why not go to 30 points or 40 points, and that introduces its whole set of crazy things into the mix.
All right, JJ, you get the last your last opinion before we close the show out. And by the way, folks, don't disappear. We are going to do an after hours Obi-Wan quick discussion about spoilers. And Cory's welcome to stay if he wants. If he has to go to bed, we understand. But Cory, you are welcome to stick around. As soon as this is over in the next few minutes, we will be jumping. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break to use the restroom, and then we'll be jumping right back into Obi-Wan spoilers because this episode is bonkers. But JJ, your last last thoughts here before we close out.
The last thing, right, is that I think that will solve a lot of people's complaint about the list building being stagnant is that a lot of times you get into a frame of mind where you've played the same list or a same type of list over and over, and you look into like a new points update and you can't run that same list, and then you become discouraged of trying something new, right? Because your old list doesn't work. Now you're upset because you can't run that same thing, and now you don't even want to try like building different lists. Take a look at the tournaments that are going on. I mean, the UK Open right now, seeing a TIE Swarm take it, a TIE Swarm that does not include TIE Defender Vader, which I may add. That's huge, right? Taking on the big contenders, which are like the heavy hitting Rebel list that we're seeing now with Trick Shot, Shatter Shot, taking on the Jedis, which are still good even though they lost their missile slots. These are people that took something that used to work before in 2.0 and they transitioned over to 2.5. They got a few more tools to work with it. They practiced with it, and they did very, very well, taking the top in these lists. And these are very competitive, like really good players that are playing, and they know how to run those lists very well. And despite that, they still took it all the way and still managed to get it done there. With more tournaments that comes out, there'll be more data in Meta Wing. We know that there are a lot of people that take a look at that to decide which pilots may be good, something that they may have not considered in the past, and try them out and see how they might find that they might like that ship or that particular pilot. And I think that just with more tourney results that we get, the more people are going to start to look at different pilots that haven't been seen on the table for a while and give them a second shot, and probably spark some ingenuity there.
Nice.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us. Remember, if you live in Florida or you want to travel to Florida, July 9th, we are hosting a in-person tournament with a bunch of cool, awesome prize support. Maybe a Rogue Class Squadron support. Maybe. We don't know. Depends on how stingy J&J gets.
No, it's definitely going to be there. It's definitely being raffled off. I do have a couple other surprises, but those will be coming out as we get more players. So stay tuned. So.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, if you travel from outside of Florida, so if you come from more than 4.5 hours, how far is it to the border for you, JJ? 4.5 hours?
4. Yeah.
4 hours. So if you travel over 4.5 hours and you win one of the big prizes and don't want to take it in your airplane trip home, I will personally pay to ship that to you. And how about this? If you fly from the UK, I'll play it just because that's insane that we had somebody from the UK come and play in a Planning Phase Syndicate tournament. So I'll pay that too, unless you're in some crazy. I don't know. I'll figure out a way to get it to you. Unless you're in Australia, then I don't know how to get anything to you. I guess I'll have to contact Nabi. Anyway, but if you want to participate, it will be streamed live on GSP July 9th. JJ or I may be commentating. We don't know yet. It kind of depends on how many players we get and all of that. But you're welcome to sign up. This week we will have links out for everything so that you'll be able to get access to everything, along with prize sheets and prize support that we have attained, with some surprises that not everybody will know about. And no, they're not just a bunch of bloody templates this time. There you go. So I'm just going to openly state we didn't go out and get a bunch of bloody templates and a bunch of bloody template holders for people to get, because everybody gets those at every bloody tournament, it seems like. We did not do this. We're giving you ships that you can either sell or give to new players. Reminder, we'll be back next week, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another amazing show. Our anniversary show is coming up here this month as well. We might actually just hold the anniversary. There's a possibility. So here's the problem. I've looked at flights down to Florida, and for whatever reason, July 9th, they are insanely costed. Like, I need $350 because the flight is like $800 to get down there for that weekend. So I'm trying to figure out a way to come up with $350 to fly down there. If I do fly down there, we will actually do a live stream. That will be our anniversary because me and JJ and Charles will all be in the same state at one time, and we will 100% set up at Charles's fancy house and do a live stream that Sunday night for our anniversary. If I don't get to go down there, then we will be live doing it. We'll pick another date for our live stream. So
yeah,
for our anniversary. With that being said, thank you all for joining us. If you have not subscribed to us here on Twitch, follow us on Twitch or subscribe to us on YouTube. If you want to support the show, you can join us over at patreon.com and you can /Planning Phase Syndicate and you can donate $1 or $2, whatever floats your boat, to help pay for the cost of running this show. With that being said, thank you all. Have a good night, and we will see you in 3 minutes when we do our spoiler cast.
See you, everybody.